Chaotic control has set out on a mission to weaponize critical thought and kick your intellect in the balls. The intellectual laziness that pollutes social media landscapes needs an advocate for reason, balance, and nuanced discourse. I am your advocate. I am chaotic control. It would seem our failing social institutions have resulted in a dearth of knowledge in the subjects of sociology and political science. People are regularly obfuscating socialism with communism, totalitarianism, dictatorships, and basically every other political system across the spectrum. With the current coronavirus pandemic inciting the imagination of some of the world's dimmest wits, some couldn't wait to seize on the opportunity to display their ignorance. Here are some examples of people getting it wrong. Lily here says,
if you don't like stores running out of basic necessities, you're not gonna like socialism and communism. Just saying.
And the troll says, rugged individualism and capitalism, no limits on hoarding goods, is what has led to what is currently being observed. Nothing to do with socialism and communism. Just saying. The socialist country I'm currently living in hasn't seen any of these activities occur. And K-pop here says,
also remember, Hitler was a socialist.
And the troll says, ha 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 ha, and the keyword below being naive, and I quote, however, the assumption that because the word socialist appeared in the party's name, and socialist words and ideas popped up in the writings and speeches of top Nazis, then the Nazis must have been actual socialists is naive and ahistorical. What the evidence shows, on the contrary, is that the Nazi party leaders paid mere lip service to socialist ideas on the way to achieving their one true goal, raw, totalitarian power. I do hope this will mark the beginning of your true interest in studying history. You could start with the many cited historians and sociologists in this article. Were the Nazis socialists? No! What's in a name? Sometimes propaganda. And I quote, the National Socialist German Workers' Party, commonly referred to in English as the Nazi Party, was a far-right political party in Germany. Anyway, I'm punching down now. Continue with your homework. I'm done schooling ya.
In order to have an informed discussion about the topic, we need to define the terms. First things first, what is a political spectrum? A political spectrum is a system to characterize and classify different political positions in relation to one another. These positions sit upon one or more geometric axes that represent independent political dimensions. Most long-standing spectra include the left-right dimension, which originally referred to seating arrangements in the French Parliament after the Revolution, 1789 to 1799, with radicals on the left and aristocrats on the right. While communism and socialism are usually regarded internationally as being on the left, conservatism and fascism are regarded internationally as being on the right. Political scientists have frequently noted that a single left-right axis is too simplistic and insufficient for describing the existing variation in political beliefs and included other axes. Though the descriptive words at polar opposites may vary, the axes of popular biaxial spectra are usually split between economic issues on a left-right dimension and socio-cultural issues on an authority-liberty dimension.
So, what is socialism? 1. Definition of socialism.
Definition of socialism. Noun. A political and economic theory of social organization which advocates that the means of production, distribution, and exchange should be owned or regulated by the community as a whole. A policy or practice based on the political and economic theory of socialism. In Marxist theory, a transitional social state between the overthrow of capitalism and the realization of communism.
2. Conception of socialism.
Types of socialism include a range of economic and social systems characterized by social ownership and democratic control of the means of production and organizational self-management of enterprises, as well as the political theories and movements associated with socialism. Social ownership may refer to forms of public, collective, or cooperative ownership, or to citizen ownership of equity, in which surplus value goes to the working class and hence society as a whole. There are many varieties of socialism and no single definition encapsulates them all, but social ownership is the common element shared by its various forms. The term socialism was coined in the 1830s, and it was first used to refer to philosophical or moral beliefs rather than any specific political views. For example, Alexandre Vinet, who claimed to have been the first person to use the term, defined socialism simply as the opposite of individualism.
3. Socialist theory.
Some branches of socialism arose largely as a philosophical construct, utopian socialism, others in the heat of a revolution, early Marxism or Leninism. A few arose merely as the product of a ruling party, Stalinism, others as a product of various worker movements, anarcho-syndicalism, or a party or other group contending for political power in a democratic society, social democracy. All socialists criticize the current system in some way. Some criticisms center on the ownership of the means of production, Marxism, whereas others tend to focus on the nature of mass and equitable distribution, example, most forms of utopian socialism. Most are opposed to unchecked industrialism as well as capitalism, example, the Green Left, and believe that under socialism the environment must be protected. Utopian socialists like Robert Owen and Henri de Saint-Simon argued, although not from exactly the same perspective, that the injustice and widespread poverty of the societies they lived in were a problem of distribution of the goods created. On the other hand, Marxian socialists determined that the root of the injustice is based not in the function of distribution of goods already created, but rather in the fact that the ownership of the means of production is in the hands of the upper class. Marxian socialists also maintain, in contrast to the utopian socialists, that the root of injustice is not in how goods, commodities are distributed, but for whose economic benefit are they produced and sold.
4. Socialism in practice.
Most forms and derivatives of Marxism and anarchism advocated total or near-total socialization of the economy. Less radical schools, example Bernsteinism, Reformism, and Reformist Marxism, proposed a mixed market economy instead. Mixed economies can in turn range anywhere from those developed by the social democratic governments that have periodically governed northern and western European countries, to the inclusion of small cooperatives in the planned economy of Yugoslavia under Josip Broz Tito. A related issue is whether it is better to reform capitalism to create a fair society, example most social democrats, or to totally overthrow the capitalist system, all Marxists. Another issue socialists are divided on is what legal and political apparatus the workers would maintain to further develop the socialization of the means of production. Some advocate that the power of the workers' councils should itself constitute the basis of a socialist state, coupled with direct democracy and the widespread use of referendums, but others hold that socialism entails the existence of a legislative body administered by people who would be elected in a representative democracy. Different ideologies support different governments. During the era of the Soviet Union, Western socialists were bitterly divided as to whether the Soviet Union was actually socialist, moving towards socialism, or inherently unsocialist and in fact inimical to true socialism. Similarly, today the government of the People's Republic of China claims to be socialist and refers to its own approach as socialism with Chinese characteristics, but most other socialists consider China to be essentially capitalist.
5. Types of socialism.
Socialist planned economy. This form of socialism combines public ownership and management of the means of production with centralized state planning and can refer to a broad range of economic systems from the centralized Soviet-style command economy to participatory planning via workplace democracy. In a centrally planned economy, decisions regarding the quantity of goods and services to be produced, as well as how the allocation of output, distribution of goods and services, are planned in advance by a planning agency. This type of economic system was often combined with a one-party political system and is associated with the communist states of the 20th century. Market socialism. Market socialism refers to various economic systems that involve either public ownership and management or worker cooperative ownership over the means of production, or a combination of both, and the market mechanism for allocating economic output, deciding what to produce and in what quantity. In state-oriented forms of market socialism where state enterprises attempt to maximize profit, the profits can fund government programs and services, eliminating or greatly diminishing the need for various forms of taxation that exist in capitalist systems. Utopian socialism. Utopian socialism is a term used to define the first currents of modern socialist thought as exemplified by the work of Henri de Saint-Simon, Charles Fourier, and Robert Owen, which inspired Karl Marx and other early socialists. Although it is technically possible for any set of ideas or any person living at any time in history to be a utopian socialist, the term is most often applied to those socialists who lived in the first quarter of the 19th century who were ascribed the label utopian by later socialists as a negative term in order to imply naivete and dismiss their ideas as fanciful or unrealistic. Forms of socialism which existed in traditional societies are referred to as primitive communism by Marxists. Marxism. Marxism or Marxist communism refers to a classless, stateless social organization based on common ownership of the means of production and a variety of movements acting in the name of this goal, which are influenced by the thought of Karl Marx. In the classic Marxist definition of pure communism, a communist economy refers to a system that has achieved a superabundance of goods and services due to an increase in technological capability and advances in the productive forces, and therefore has transcended socialism, otherwise known as post-scarcity economy. This is a hypothetical stage of social and economic development with few speculative details known about it. The actual goal of communism has never been attained in practice from a Marxist position, though anarchist societies have provided a glimpse of what a communist world would look like. The real idea behind it is to abolish all leadership and govern with a commune. That is, the people themselves make all decisions, with everyone contributing to the well-being of the commune. In practice, most governments that have claimed to be communist have been totalitarian dictatorships. Leninism and Marxism-Leninism. Vladimir Lenin never used the term Leninism, nor did he refer to his views as Marxism-Leninism. However, his ideas diverged from classical Marxist theory on several important points. Bolshevik communists saw these differences as advancements of Marxism made by Lenin. After Lenin's death, his ideology and contributions to Marxist theory were termed Marxism-Leninism, or sometimes only Leninism. Marxism-Leninism soon became the official name for the ideology of the Comintern and of communist parties around the world. Stalinism. Stalinism was the theory and practice of communism practiced by Joseph Stalin, leader of the Soviet Union from 1928 to 1953. Officially, it adhered to Marxism-Leninism, but whether Stalin's practices actually followed the principles of Marx and Lenin is a subject of debate and criticism. In contrast to Marx and Lenin, Stalin made few new theoretical contributions. Stalin's main contributions to communist theory were socialism in one country and the theory of aggravation of class struggle under socialism, a theoretical base supporting the repression of political opponents when necessary. Stalinism took an aggressive stance on class conflict, utilizing state violence in an attempt to forcibly purge society of the bourgeoisie. Maoism. A key concept that distinguishes Maoism from other left-wing ideologies is the belief that the class struggle continues throughout the entire socialist period as a result of the fundamental antagonistic contradiction between capitalism and communism. Even when the proletariat has seized state power through the socialist revolution, the potential remains for a bourgeoisie to restore capitalism. Indeed, Mao famously stated that the bourgeoisie in a socialist country is right inside the Communist Party itself, implying that corrupt party officials would subvert socialism if not prevented. Trotskyism. Trotskyism is the theory of Marxism as advocated by Leon Trotsky. Trotsky considered himself a Bolshevik Leninist, arguing for the establishment of a vanguard party. He considered himself an advocate of orthodox Marxism. His politics differed greatly from those of Stalin or Mao, most importantly in declaring the need for an international permanent revolution and arguing that democracy is essential to both socialism and communism. Numerous groups around the world continue to describe themselves as Trotskyist and see themselves as standing in this tradition, although they have diverse interpretations of the conclusions to be drawn from this. Social democracy. Social democracy can be divided into classic and modern strands. Classic social democracy was a political philosophy that attempted to achieve socialism through gradual parliamentary means and by reforming capitalism from within rather than through revolutionary means. The term social democracy can refer to the particular kind of society that social democrats advocate. Democratic socialism. Democratic socialists and social democrats both advocate the concept of the welfare state. But where most social democrats view the welfare state as the end itself, irrespective of any hierarchies of power that may persist following welfare reforms, many democratic socialists view it as the means to an egalitarian end. Highlighting this difference, contemporary advocates of the democratic socialist model have criticized the social democratic approach of the welfare state if it is not adequately providing socioeconomic welfare programs at the universal level. Democratic socialists are also committed to the ideas of the redistribution of wealth and power, as well as social ownership of major industries, concepts widely abandoned by social democrats. There are no countries in the world that would qualify as a democratic socialist state, although some states describe themselves as such, for example Venezuela, whose former leader Hugo Chavez claimed that democratic socialism was integral to the Bolivarian form of socialism that he was trying to promote.
6. Countries with socialist principles at work. Marxist-Leninist states.
People's Republic of China, Republic of Cuba, Laos People's Democratic Republic, Socialist Republic of Vietnam.
Non-Marxist-Leninist states.
People's Democratic Republic of Algeria, People's Republic of Bangladesh, Cooperative Republic of Guyana, Republic of India, Democratic People's Republic of Korea, Democratic People's Republic of Korea, Federal Democratic Republic of Nepal, Republic of Nicaragua, Portuguese Republic, Democratic Socialist Republic of Sri Lanka, United Republic of Tanzania.
Multi-party states with governing communist or socialist parties.
Algeria, Angola, Bangladesh, Barbados, Congo, Ecuador, Ethiopia, Guinea-Bissau, Guyana, Mauritius, Mozambique, Mexico, Namibia, Nepal, Nicaragua, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Suriname, Tanzania, Uruguay, Venezuela, Zambia.
And several others. As with everything in life, the issues aren't black and white. When somebody says he's a socialist, ask what kind. Because the issues are nuanced. It's like saying socialism is a tree. Yes, but what kind of tree? Although all trees share a similar form, different trees perform different functions, and all trees bear many different fruits. Nothing is simple, and we do a disservice to educating one another by allowing ourselves to accept simple labeling as representative of complex concepts. Tell your friends to watch this video.